We're asked to solve the following inequality and then write the answer in interval notation. Um, so even though it asks for either interval notation or graphing, I tend to do all of them, and we're going to go through that process. And some of it's because I think it's easier to get to interval notation from a graph. It's just kind of intermediate. It helps me kind of get it in my head because your interval notation should match the left to right the way a graph reads, smallest to largest. And so it just helps me organize it in my brain. My brain is a very confusing place. Okay, so we start by cleaning this up. Just like any equation, remember there's only two extra rules for inequalities. Um, First, that you keep the inequality, and the second is if you multiply or divide by a negative number, you flip the direction of the sign. Addition and subtraction doesn't matter, it's just multiplication and division. So I'm going to start, and here on the left side, I'm going to start by distributing. So negative 15x plus 3 because the negative goes with it. Now over on this side, you'll notice we have two sets of parentheses. You could use all parentheses. The parentheses and brackets here don't matter. You might also see what are called braces used, which are the curly Q ones that I can't make to save my life. Um, they're just to kind of help you keep them apart. You always start on the farthest inside and work out. So when I look at this, okay, and I'm just going to use parentheses for everything. I'm going to do 2 plus 10x plus 30. So what I did is I cleared this right here, this inner one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up in here because I'm still, remember, my PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, says that parentheses I'll get done first. So I'm going to continue now working, but parentheses work from the inside out. So down here, negative 15x plus 3. And then here, this is going to become 32 plus 10x. So what I did is I distributed and then I added in that 2. So now I've cleared my parentheses. I've cleaned up the inside. Now I can distribute. So negative 15x plus 3, negative 64 minus 20x. So at this point, all I've done is clean up. Now I need to start moving across my inequality sign, just like I would if this was an equal sign. There's really nothing different unless I have to divide or multiply by a negative number. Nothing changes. So I'm going to add 20x to both sides. You could do the opposite way, but I like positive numbers, so hence that way. And then I am going to subtract 3. So at this point, I have done nothing that I wouldn't do if I was working a regular problem, right? Then this last step, I'm going to divide by 5. Now, I'm dividing into a negative number, but not by a negative number. So therefore, nothing changes. So this is my simplified answer. Now from here, I want to get to interval notation. So usually what I do first is I graph it. So here's my negative 67. This is smaller. So this says I'm going this way. This is my old open circle. It's not inclusive. I use a parenthesis. So parenthesis is for not inclusive. That means there's no or equals. There's no line underneath it. So parentheses are these. Brackets are these. Okay. So I look at this. Now when I go to do this, to change it to this, because I'm going off into infinity, I'm just going off to one end. This is negative infinity because it's the negative end, goes to 67, and then this brings down the parenthesis because it was open-ended. Now, if I was going off the other end, I'd use a positive thing. So if this had been this way, I would do this because order matters here. So now I'm going to go put this into my problem. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to do my parenthesis. I'm going to do a negative sign and then infinity and then another negative sign, 67/5. And that's my answer. So that graph was not strictly necessary, but I find it helps me know which direction to go because it gives me a physical item to look at, and that helps me a lot. So the steps on this problem are clean up the problem. Remember, there's only one difference with inequalities from equations. It's just like you're solving an equation, except you got to watch for if you divide or multiply by a negative number, only by and only multiply or divide. And then I usually choose to graph it. It's not strictly necessary to take that intermediate step, but I like it because it tells me it helps me just physically think which direction am I going. And then we write it in interval notation. Um, if you are open-ended, so that means you don't have a little equal sign underneath it, you will use parentheses. If you do, you will use brackets. So brackets are our old closed circle that shows we include that number. Parentheses are the open circle that shows we don't include that number.